I was surprised when I started getting allergies, coughing, wheezing. Check behind my closets, and there, behold, in all its glory. Hello! So today I wanted to give you my insights and talk about my experience with renting a flat in London. I thought the process of renting a flat in London would be very similar to renting a flat in Leamington Spa, which is the town that I was in for my university. But turns out it's actually very different. And even though the insights and my tips in this video may sound very amateur and quite common sense, you'd be surprised at how many people, including myself, didn't realize the process of renting a flat in London. What are the hidden costs? What are things that you need to look out for? I feel like these are things they really just don't teach you in university. So I'm here to provide a free lecture into renting a flat in London. It can also be extremely overwhelming, especially in a big city like London, which has so many pros, but then there are also some areas that you need to steer clear of. Starting out with the process, I started browsing accommodation options about 2 to 1 month prior to my move-in date. This is considered very early because you realize the good thing about London is that you don't have to search way in advance before your ideal move-in date, and that's really due to the high influx of people coming in and out of London, and subsequently to match that high demand, there's always going to be high supply. I remember when I was looking at properties in Leamington Spa, which is the town that I used to live in while I was in university, I remember 2 months prior was already too late. I had to look 5 months prior. Whereas in London, because there's such high supply here to match that high demand, you're easily going to find something. Then again, it can also be counterintuitive because if there's a high influx of people coming in, it also means that London flats get snapped up very quickly. Hence, you have to search every day and you have to apply very quickly. Most importantly of all, you have to be prepared for disappointment and cancelled viewings. I like to stress this, especially if you are an international student or if you're a person living abroad of London, because agents are not going to waste their time for a virtual viewing. They prioritize those that are already in London and cannot face the viewing in person. So there are a lot of letting agency sites to browse on, but something that worked really well for me, and I thought the interface was so seamless and so convenient for a tech noob like me, was Rightmove. You can filter by obviously the most important of all, your budget, the size, how many bedrooms you want, and so forth. It has a mapping chart to map out the areas that you want to live in and filter by that. So once I settled on a few properties that I was interested in, I would immediately just call at 9 a.m. sharp, even sometimes 8:30 UK time, using my Skype credits. Another tip is to use Skype credits if you want to call overseas. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this, but if you're not, Skype credit has different plans to call overseas. I literally paid only like £5, and that permits me to 100 minutes of UK overseas calls, because keep in mind I was back in my home country at this point. You can email, but I tried that and it takes months for them to get back. If not, they just ghost you. So best bet is to just call them immediately, inquire about the viewing. If you want flatmates and you don't already have who you want to live with in mind, you can use spareroom.com, and it helps you rent by rooms rather than the whole apartment or the house. And of course, there are filters there that allow you to filter by gender, smoking habits, also pets, non-pets, etc. Something to also keep in mind of, which I didn't have to do back in Leamington Spa, was keep in mind of council tax. Council tax is a really big thing in UK, and your rent can vary drastically based on your council tax and what band it is in. Each accommodation in London is categorized into different bands for their council tax, A being the cheapest of the council tax and G being the highest of the council tax. If you have a rough postcode and address of your ideal accommodation, you can use the following website to actually check roughly what band your council tax is in and the estimate of how much you'll be paying each month. Currently, I'm in band D, and I pay about circa on average £190 for 2 people per month, which is about circa £95 per person. Whereas I have a friend who is unfortunately in band G and pays £150 per person per month. Council tax is really based on numerous things, but most prevalent of all, it's based on the value of the property, the size, and the location. For example, the bigger the square foot of your flat, the more council tax you inevitably have to pay. Of course, the most important of all, don't just take the price which is listed on the website. You have to negotiate. Again, this is very different for when I was in Leamington Spa. We just take what's on the market. There's no room for negotiation, whereas in London there is. To be fair, our negotiation wasn't really bang for the buck. Just because we were desperate, we had to move in ASAP, so we only negotiated from $2,400 per month to $2,350. If you get the fortunate chance to view the property, which I highly recommend, please be sure to take off dampness or mold in the walls. You can feel the walls. Like, I know it look weird just touching the walls, but you can feel the dampness. You just know the notable difference between dry and damp wall. A lot of London buildings are very old, and the structure, the integrity of the walls, the buildings are just depleting, and that invites a lot of mold because you have low ventilation. Unfortunately, this happened to me. Love it. I didn't get the chance to view the property. I was overseas, back in my home country, and based on the pictures, it looked fine. Came, stayed for 1 week, and realized I started getting allergies. Now I have an air purifier in my room, pretty good one, okay, a bestseller on Amazon. So I was surprised when I started getting allergies, coughing, wheezing. I realized that it may just be mold within the walls. I checked behind my closets, and there, behold, in all its glory, black mold on the walls, taking up the entire section. I went through every stages of grief. Anyways, I had to move out for 1 week, which was such a pain in the ass because I just started work, so I was getting my setup ready, my monitor, everything. Fortunately, I was able to claim a rent refund for that 1 week. Right, I should be permitted to that refund because it is the landlord's duty before you move in to make the place habitable, which clearly wasn't. Moving on to actually securing the offer and the documents, etc. This is a very tedious part because there are a lot of documents to fill out, including the most important of all, the reference check. So especially if you're a graduate and you have a full-time job, the letting agent has the authority to reach out to your employer and confirm employment status. It can also be very tedious, especially if you come from overseas, because they're concerned with your visa, which we literally did not have any issues with our visa. It was so smooth sailing, but for some reason the landlord was a bit finicky about it. So 4 days before our move-in date, they actually asked us to pay 6 months upfront of rent. I was actually quite pissed because if you had told me a month before our move-in date, I would have been fine, but you're telling me 4 days before, and that is a lot of money. Anyways, after all of that is settled, they will confirm with you a date to pick up your keys, and you pick them over at the letting agency office, in which they will have someone usually come over and have an inventory check. Upon your arrival, this part is actually very important, and this is the part where you have to take the most evidence. You have to build your case as if you're going to court. You really have to take photos of every faulty in the house, even if it's the most minor details. You just have to take a photo of that, and this is so you don't have to give up your deposit for any damages which you did not commit. Previously, in my experience when I lived in Leamington Spa, the mattress had already been stained, but 18 years old me didn't think about taking a photo. I just thought, okay, this should be fine. So by the end of my tenancy agreement, the letting agency actually charged me £50, took it away from our deposit because I just failed to show evidence that I did not commit the stain. And if you notice any faulties in the house, you should ASAP send this to the landlord, because by right and in the contractual agreement, it should state that all things should be in working order unless the inventory stated otherwise. So by right, they should be doing something about it. Most accommodations in London should have a break clause. I think if not, it is by right. You should have a break clause at either the 6-month mark or the 12-month. And for us, our break clause is the 6-month. Our term date is the 12th month. This break clause allows you to leave your tenancy agreement earlier than expected. In my case, I would have to give 2 months prior notice before my desired move out date. And if I ever wanted to leave after the break clause ended, but also before my term date, then I would have to find a replacement, and I would also have to pay a replacement fee of, I believe, £50. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now moving on to my area and why I chose to live here. So I live in Canada Water. I found it very safe. I wanted to be able to walk home from the train station to my house without any wackos coming near me. So that was just something that I really prioritized. I think Canada Water is also a really good option if you work in Canary Wharf like I do, and you want this detachment away from work, but you also want to be one stop away from your office. Very convenient, literally from my house to Canary Wharf, my office, it takes about 6-7 minutes. At the same time, I also chose Canada Water because I find that the properties in Canada Water, Canary Wharf are just more modern as opposed to central London, City of London. You'll find that it's also more bang for the buck, so you're paying less for a bigger size or perhaps a more modern apartment. And also, of course, it's on the Jubilee line. I find the Jubilee line the most efficient line in London. There's service on it, so I can call people. There's mobile data. I can use my social media. It's very convenient. I'm very close to the major hubs in London, such as London Bridge, Waterloo, Green Park, and that connects you to the Victoria Line, the Piccadilly. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. I'll be sure to answer them. But hope you have fun flat hunting and good luck. Bye.